He ignored her at a work party and even left laughing with someone else. Soon after, fate surprised her following an accident. Clara was standing in front of the mirror in her small New York apartment, feeling both nervous and excited. The soft afternoon light filtered through the curtains, illuminating her face as she got ready for the New Year's Eve party. The red dress she had chosen was tight and highlighted her curves, but more important than her appearance was the hope pulsing in her heart. Today would be the day she finally confessed her feelings to Jake, her coworker who had fascinated her since the first day they met. As she adjusted her hair, Clara couldn't shake off thoughts of Jake. He was charming, with that smile that lit up any room and a gentle way that made her feel special, even when he wasn't speaking directly to her. "Today's the day, Clara," she whispered to herself, trying to encourage herself. "You can't let this opportunity slip away. Life is too short." With one last look in the mirror, Clara grabbed her small purse and hurried out of the apartment, feeling the cold New York winter as she opened the door. The path to the luxurious rooftop where the party would be held was filled with twinkling lights and lively people, but Clara felt that, despite the excitement around her, she was just a shadow. When she arrived at the venue, the atmosphere was festive. Loud music echoed, and laughter filled the air. Clara took a deep breath, trying to blend into the crowd. She spotted Jake right ahead, surrounded by friends, his eyes shining as he told a funny story. Clara approached, but insecurity paralyzed her. A group of people pushed her, and before she realized it, Jake was laughing and dancing with someone he knew, as if she weren't there. "Clara, you made it!" A familiar voice pulled her out of her thoughts. It was her friend Lisa, who dragged her onto the dance floor. Clara forced a smile, but all she could do was watch Jake. Every time he turned around, her heart raced, but the feeling of invisibility consumed her. She realized that as much as she wanted to approach him, there was an invisible barrier preventing her from connecting with the guy she so admired. "Why don't you go talk to him?" Lisa asked, noticing Clara's restlessness. "You already know him, and he seems to be having fun. Enjoy the night." I don't know," Clara replied, hesitating. "What if he doesn't notice me? What if I look pathetic? Clara, you're amazing. You deserve to be seen. Now, go on." Lisa encouraged, giving her a gentle push towards Jake. But before Clara could take a step, she saw Jake walking away with someone else, laughing and gesturing animatedly. The pain of rejection hit her like a blow, and she felt even more invisible. With a heavy heart, Clara decided to leave the party. The cold air hit her like a bucket of ice water, and she began walking aimlessly through the streets of New York. The city's lights twinkled, but none of them seemed to illuminate the void that had settled in her chest. "What's wrong with me?" she thought, feeling tears threatening to spill down her face. "Why can't I just be myself?" Promising herself that next New Year's Eve would be different, Clara vowed to find her confidence and not let love slip away again. The idea comforted her, but doubt still lingered in her mind. The party was over for her, but the search for a new beginning was just starting. Months had passed since the New Year's Eve party, and Clara's life had taken an unexpected turn. After the bicycle accident that left her with a cast on her leg, she found herself forced to slow down. The physical pain was a constant reminder of her limitations, but it also pushed her toward new horizons. When she decided to enroll in a community rehabilitation project, Clara had no idea it would change her life so significantly. On the first day of the project, the environment was welcoming, with volunteers and participants exchanging smiles and encouraging words. Clara sat in a corner, observing the others interact, her insecurity still present. Then she heard a familiar laugh. Turning slowly, she saw Jake, the guy who had fascinated her, chatting animatedly with a group of young people. "Clara," he called, noticing her presence. His eyes lit up, and she felt a warmth in her cheeks. It wasn't just a casual greeting, but an invitation to inclusion. "Hi, Jake," she replied, trying to hide her shyness. He walked over, and Clara could feel her heart race. "I didn't know you'd be here. How are you feeling?" he asked, genuinely interested. "Oh, I'm recovering, slowly," Clara replied, a bit hesitant. "My leg is getting better, but it's still a challenge." "That's great. If you need help with anything, just let me know," Jake smiled, and Clara felt a bit more confident. The conversation flowed naturally, and the connection that once seemed distant was now within her reach. During the day's activities, Clara and Jake were assigned to work together on a gardening project. As they dug the soil and planted seeds, laughter and stories began to emerge. "Were you always this good with plants?" Clara asked, trying to break the ice. "Actually, no. I'm only here because my grandmother always said that caring for plants is a way of caring for yourself," Jake replied, looking at his dirt-covered hands. "And you? What brought you to this project?" "I thought it would be a good way to distract myself and maybe help a little," Clara responded, feeling more at ease. "Besides, I'm trying to find new ways of seeing life." "That's important. Sometimes a small project can change everything," Jake reflected as he carefully planted a seedling. "What do you hope to discover?" Clara hesitated, sensing it was a special moment. "To be honest, I'd like to feel more visible, as if I had value beyond my appearance." Jake paused for a moment, looking directly into her eyes. "Clara, you are incredibly special. Sometimes people don't realize it, but that doesn't diminish who you are," he said, choosing his words carefully. "It took me a long time to see it, but you have a light that's hard to ignore." His words touched Clara deeply. She smiled, a mix of joy and relief. The tension that had been present since the New Year's Eve party began to dissipate, and a new hope started to grow within her. As the day progressed, the two grew closer, sharing stories about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. Clara discovered that Jake also had his own burdens. He talked about his insecurities and how he felt pressured to be perfect in everything he did. "You don't have to be perfect, Jake," Clara said, feeling more confident with each word. "We all have our imperfections. What matters is how we deal with them." "You're right," Jake agreed with a smile. "It's good to hear that from someone who really understands." At the end of the day, as they said goodbye, Clara felt she had taken a significant step. The connection that had formed between them was palpable, and she knew she was beginning to see herself in a new way. The insecurity that had accompanied her for so long was starting to fade, and instead, a new sense of self-worth was blossoming. "See you tomorrow, Jake," Clara said, waving as she walked away. "See you tomorrow, Clara," he replied, the sparkle in his eyes promising a reunion full of possibilities. Clara watched the sunlight filtering through the windows of the community center, where she had signed up to help rehabilitate vulnerable youth. The environment was welcoming, but she could barely focus on the activities. Her mind was preoccupied with the revelations about Jake, which, with each new conversation, seemed to unveil a side of him she had never noticed before. He also had his internal battles, and this made her feel closer to him. On a sunny afternoon, while sorting materials for a new activity, Clara decided it was time to open up. "Jake, you've already told me that you're here for a special reason. I'm also dealing with some things. Can I share them with you?" she asked hesitantly. Jake looked at her, his blue eyes reflecting the sunlight. "Of course, Clara. I'd love to hear it. What's on your mind?" The sincerity in his voice made her heart race. She took a deep breath, gathering courage. Since the accident, I've realized that I felt invisible. I've always dreamed of being someone important, but sometimes I feel like I'm nothing. And when I saw you at the New Year's Eve party, I realized I was so focused on you that I couldn't see my own worth." Jake watched her attentively. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in our own problems and forget who we really are. I've also been through difficulties. When my brother passed away, I withdrew from everything. It was hard to deal with the pain, and I got involved in this project to try to find a purpose again, to help others, but also to help myself. Jake's words touched Clara in a profound way. She felt it was a genuine connection, a kind of empathy that made her feel valued. "You're an amazing person, Jake. The way you care about people is inspiring. I've admired that from the beginning." He smiled, a smile that lit up his face and made Clara's heart beat faster. "Thank you, Clara. That means a lot to me. Sometimes I just need to hear that to remember I'm on the right path." Their friendship grew stronger each day. They laughed together, shared stories, and supported each other through tough times. Clara's insecurities began to dissipate, but a shadow still loomed over her heart. She wondered if Jake really saw her as more than a friend. What she felt for him was intense and real, but the fear of rejection prevented her from declaring herself. One night, while organizing a fun activity for the project's kids, an anonymous message appeared on her phone. Clara read it, feeling her heart sink. "Jake is involved with someone else. Don't be fooled." The message hit her like a blow. "Clara, are you okay?" Jake interrupted, noticing her change in expression. "You look pale." I got a message. It's about you," she murmured, her voice trembling. "About me? What does it say?" He approached, concern evident in his eyes. "It says you're with someone else, that you're not just interested in me," Clara confessed, feeling anguish take hold of her. "I don't know if it's true, but it devastated me." Jake was silent for a moment, as if processing the information. "Clara, that can't be true. I'm not with anyone. You know I only want the best for you in the project." His voice was firm, but Clara noticed a hint of pain in his expression. She felt a wave of relief at his words, but doubts still tormented her. "What if it's true, Jake? What would I do then? I don't know how to handle this." He took a step forward, holding her hands. "Don't think like that. Let's talk about it. We can't let an anonymous message destroy what we're building. I value our friendship a lot and want you to know you're special to me." Clara looked into his eyes, searching for sincerity. "So, what should we do? Let's sit down and talk. Don't let others dictate what we feel for each other," Jake suggested, with a determination that made Clara feel warmth grow in her chest. That night, as the city lights glowed in the distance, Clara decided she needed to confront the situation head-on. No longer allowing herself to be led by insecurities or assumptions, it was time to discover the truth, whatever it might be. Clara sat on a park bench, watching the leaves of the trees dance in the wind. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopies, and the golden light seemed to embrace everything around her. It was a beautiful day, but her mind was elsewhere. The anonymous message she had received echoed in her thoughts, and doubt began to consume the joy she had found in her new friendship with Jake. As Jake approached, Clara felt her heart race and her breath quicken. He wore a genuine smile that lit up his face. "Hi, Clara. Are you okay?" The concern in his voice made her hesitate for a moment. The sincerity in his gaze was comforting, but the message resurfaced, like a shadow that wouldn't leave her alone. "Hi, Jake. I've been thinking about some things. Actually, I received a message that left me confused," Clara began, trying to find the right words. Jake raised an eyebrow, his smile slowly fading. "Message? What are you talking about?" "It's just, someone sent me a text saying you're involved with someone else," she said, her voice faltering slightly. The silence that followed seemed to drag on, and Clara held her breath, nervous. Jake looked at her with a surprised expression, as if she had just given him unexpected news. "Clara, that's absurd. I'm not with anyone," he stated, his voice firm. "You know I enjoy spending time with you. I would never do that." His words were a balm for the anxiety consuming her, but the seed of doubt was still planted in her heart. "I know, Jake. It's just that I don't understand why someone would do this," Clara murmured, feeling her chest tighten. "It's hard not to believe you, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like you're hiding something." Jake's gaze became serious, and he leaned forward, as if wanting to connect more deeply with her. "Clara, I have no secrets. I just want you to know that you're important to me. Since that day at the project, I felt more connected to you than to anyone else," he said, and Clara could see the sincerity in his eyes. His vulnerability touched her in a way she hadn't expected. "I feel that way too, Jake. But what if this message is true? What if you're hiding something?" The words left her mouth before she could think twice. She knew she was putting herself in a delicate position, but the insecurity was a heavy burden to bear. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I understand that you're worried, but I can't control what others say. What I can control is my truth, and my truth is that I've always admired you, Clara. It's not easy for me to talk about this, but you're special to me," he said, with a sincerity that made her heart race. "Do you really mean that?" Clara asked, hope beginning to sprout within her. Jake nodded, his gaze becoming intense. "Yes, I've always admired your strength and determination. You're an amazing person, and I'd like to spend more time with you. That's my secret." His words left Clara speechless. She felt as if she were floating, the insecurity that had accompanied her beginning to dissipate. But still, the anonymous message weighed on her mind like a dark cloud. Jake, I want to believe you. I want to trust, but I can't help feeling insecure. I understand, and you have every right to feel that way. Let's do this. I want you to know that I'm here, and if you need proof of my sincerity, I'm willing to provide it. Let's get to know each other better and clear all this up, he suggested, his gaze sweet and open. Clara smiled, feeling warmth grow inside her. That would be great, Jake. I just want this to work. They stared at each other in a comfortable silence, where words weren't necessary. It was as if, in that moment, the rest of the world had disappeared. But as a new understanding began to blossom between them, the sound of a notification interrupted the tranquility. Clara looked at her phone and saw that a new message had arrived. Her heart sank when she saw it was from an unknown number, and she felt torn between opening the message and ignoring it. Clara, is everything okay? Jake asked, noticing the change in her expression. She hesitated, looking at the phone and then at him. It's just another message from an unknown number. Do you want to open it? We can face this together, he suggested, his voice calm and supportive. Clara took a deep breath, the dilemma forming in her mind. She wanted to trust Jake, but uncertainty still loomed like a shadow, and she didn't know what awaited her on the other side of that message. Clara walked through the streets of New York, her mind buzzing with confused thoughts and a whirlwind of emotions. After the conversation with Jake, she was consumed by an urgent desire to discover the truth behind the anonymous messages. Insecurity and doubt gnawed at her, and she knew she had to act. The idea that someone was trying to sabotage her relationship with Jake made her restless, but she didn't know where to start. Arriving at the cafe where she usually met Jake, Clara sat at a corner table and began observing the people around her. Between sips of coffee and deep breaths, her gaze fixed on Sarah, the coworker who had always seemed a little more interested in her life than normal. Clara remembered moments when Sarah would look at her with a disdainful air, as if waiting for the right moment to strike. It can't just be a coincidence, Clara thought, as her mind formulated a plan. Determined, Clara decided she needed to confront Sarah. With her heart racing, she headed to the office. Upon entering, she spotted Sarah chatting animatedly with another colleague. Her cheerfulness irritated Clara. She took a deep breath and approached, interrupting the conversation. Sarah, we need to talk, Clara said, her voice firm, though nervousness betrayed her. Sarah raised an eyebrow, surprised. Sure, Clara. What happened? You seem anxious. I found out that you've been behind the messages I've been receiving. Clara shot back, her gaze fixed on Sarah's. Why would you do that? Sarah hesitated for a moment, an ironic smile forming on her lips. Oh, Clara, you and your dramas. Do you really think I have time for that? I'm not joking, Sarah, Clara insisted, frustration growing inside her. I know you're trying to sabotage my relationship with Jake. Why? What do you gain from it? With a sigh, Sarah finally gave in. You really don't get it? It's always been you, Clara. Dear and perfect Clara. I was just helping to open your eyes. Jake isn't who you think he is. He has his secrets. Sarah's words cut Clara like a knife. Part of her wanted to believe it was all a lie, but another part was intrigued and terrified. What secrets? She asked, her voice trembling. Oh, you know, things. He has a complicated past. He's not the Prince Charming you imagine. You should be worried, Sarah said with a smile that mixed malice and satisfaction. Clara felt her confidence wavering. Remembering the moments they shared, she wanted to believe in Jake, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it left her distressed. If you really care about him, why would you try to push me away from him? Clara questioned, anger beginning to take over. Because you don't deserve it, Sarah shot back, her tone becoming more aggressive. You're just lucky, Clara. Lucky to be you. Clara took a step back, shocked. You're just being jealous. That's pathetic, Sarah. Pathetic is you thinking someone like Jake would really be interested in you, Sarah provoked, laughing without joy. He's an amazing guy, and you're just a shadow. With a heavy heart, Clara realized she couldn't let Sarah's words affect her. She couldn't allow her insecurities to prevail. I'm not a shadow. I'm stronger than you think, and I'm going to find out the truth about Jake, with or without you. Sarah smiled, as if she had been waiting for this reaction. Go ahead, Clara, but remember what I said. You might get hurt. Clara turned and left the office, feeling more determined than ever. Every step she took brought her closer to the truth she sought, and now, more than ever, she knew she needed to talk to Jake. Sarah's words echoed in her mind, but she wouldn't let them get her down. Clara was ready to face whatever came her way, in search of the truth and her own worth. Clara's heart raced as she waited for Jake in the small living room of the community project. The walls were adorned with before and after photos of the community renovations, each image reflecting the hope everyone there shared. But at that moment, her hope seemed at risk. When Jake entered, his expression was concerned. "Clara, you called for me?" he said, closing the door behind him. Clara took a deep breath, struggling against the emotions that overwhelmed her. She didn't want this moment to become more complicated than it already was, but she needed to be clear. I heard some things about you, Jake. Sarah, she said you're not who I thought you were." Jake frowned, confused. "What exactly did she say?" he asked, taking a step forward, as if trying to shorten the emotional distance between them. "She hinted that you're hiding something, that you're not being totally honest with me." Clara hesitated, watching his reaction. "I don't want to believe it, but it's hard to ignore." "Sarah has always had a way of manipulating people," Jake responded, his voice firm. "She can't stand seeing others happy. What she told you is a lie, Clara. I've never hidden anything from you. In fact, I like you a lot." Jake's words enveloped her like a comforting embrace, but Clara was still unsure. "So you have nothing to hide?" she questioned, seeking the truth in his eyes. "Nothing. I'm here because I want to be with you. I've always wanted to." Jake paused, his gaze fixed on hers. "Sarah just used this as a weapon to try to drive us apart, and I know she spoke ill of me to you, but the truth is, I've been here, helping, because I believe in what we do." Clara felt the weight of his words, a mix of relief and anger. Anger at Sarah, who had done so much to cause pain and distrust between them. "Then we need to do something about it," Clara asserted, her determination growing. "We can't let her continue with this." "I agree. We need to expose the truth," Jake said, his gaze becoming more intense. "If she's manipulating the situation, we can't let it affect us." The two teamed up on a plan. Now more confident, Clara began gathering evidence of Sarah's manipulations, while Jake talked to other volunteers and tried to understand the extent of her actions. The following weeks were intense, filled with meetings and discussions. Together, they managed to create a detailed report on Sarah's actions, presenting evidence to the project coordinators. Finally, the day of the presentation arrived. Clara was nervous, but Jake's presence beside her encouraged her. When the organization's coordinator heard the accusations and read the evidence, his expression changed. "This is unacceptable. We will take the necessary steps," he stated, looking directly at Clara and Jake. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention." Clara felt immense relief, but at the same time, part of her regretted what had happened. When Sarah was called in for a meeting, Clara and Jake watched from a distance. The atmosphere was tense. Sarah, who had once been an attractive and confident figure, now seemed nervous and defensive. "I didn't do anything," Sarah shouted, her voice echoing in the room. "This is all a conspiracy." But the evidence was irrefutable. By the end of the day, Sarah was dismissed from the project. The disdain of her colleagues surrounded her, and Clara felt a mix of triumph and compassion. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, placing an arm around her, bringing her back to reality. I'm fine, I think." Clara took a deep breath, looking at the space where Sarah had been. Now we can focus on what really matters. With Sarah out of the way, Clara and Jake could finally explore what was between them without more doubts or interference. Together, they dedicated themselves even more to the project, promoting events and helping the community grow. Clara felt visible, valued, and the connection she had with Jake deepened every day. The love that had been hidden in Clara's story finally blossomed in a safe space. They laughed together, shared dreams, and built a future that once seemed distant. Clara realized that overcoming betrayals and secrets had made her stronger, and that the truth would always prevail. Now think with me. How many times have you found yourself in situations like this, where someone ignored you or made you feel small, but then life brought an unexpected twist? The truth is that every situation has something to teach us, and perhaps what you saw as an obstacle is actually the beginning of something much bigger. Have you ever stopped to reflect on what you can learn from these encounters with destiny? Leave your opinion in the comments and click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you liked what you heard now, without a doubt, you'll love this other story too. So, subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.